Dillian Whyte, was he set up? So I watched Hatman do a video on this, and by the end of it, Hatman said that in his opinion, Dillian Whyte probably did fail, but he talked about weaponized drug testing. And some people, I'm not saying I subscribe to this, but some people believe that in this situation that they feel that Dillian Whyte was actually in fact set up. And, they go and they say stuff like, well, Derek Chisora saying to David Hay that Dillian Whyte's going to fail, which implies that he knew something was up. Now, I'm just going to come out right away and say, Dillian Whyte, a tree is known by its fruits. And what I mean by that is that this is not Dillian Whyte's first brush with issues with drug testing. It's not. It's his third time, and some people have said in the amateurs he had issues as well. So this is his third time as a pro. For that reason, you've got to look at Dillian Whyte and say, well, yeah, you probably are guilty. And to be honest with you, if you want my opinion, I would say he probably is guilty. I'd say he probably went into this fight thinking, I've not been looking the best. I need whatever advantage I can get, and that's how it is. That's probably what I think did happen. But what struck me as so bizarre about, not what Hatman was saying at all, but people's reaction when they were hearing, even the theory that there could be weaponized drug testing or anything like that, saying that it's, that doesn't happen. And Hatman used the Povetkin versus Vladimir Klitschko situation where neither guy wanted to take the other guy's drug testing. And it reminded me, this was the Povetkin Klitschko fight way back when, I think a decade ago nearly. And it reminded me of a situation where two fighters failed drug tests, but they were exonerated almost immediately because, well, I'll tell you this story now. So I wanted to bring this story to people's attention because it only happened in the not too distant past, the end of 2015. And I know with boxing, a lot of subscribers have told me and said stuff that they've got into boxing, say 2016, 17, 18. So a lot of people who watch my videos and maybe watch other people's videos wouldn't have really been keen viewers of boxing at this time. And this was on a card that it was a great card, but a lot of hardcore fans would have watched. It wouldn't have been something that would have primarily appealed to the casual audience. In fact, I don't think it would have appealed to them at all. And I think a lot of people don't remember this incident. And I don't think a lot of people have actually heard of it. And I want to discuss this because for me, this is a situation where two fighters, not just one, but two who fought on this particular card were set up and were ultimately exonerated. So I should really have it. I'm going to pop it up on screen now. This was the card in question. It was actually from November 2015. November 2015. It was on a Wednesday, believe it or not. Very rare you get cards like this on a Wednesday that aren't, we'll say, like in Japan and places like that. But Alexander Povetkin. Now, I know on BoxRec it looks a little bit different. It has Troyanovsky as the main event, but I believe Alexander Povetkin main evented against Mariusz Wach. At the time, on this card, and by the way, this card was on Box Nation. So, back before pre-DAZN and, Fight TV and stuff like that, you really only had Box Nation. You didn't even have BT Sport doing boxing. It was literally Box Nation and Sky. But the good thing about it is that Box Nation and Sky, more so Box Nation to be fair, they bought loads of different shows. Like I think they just bought the shows and probably paid pennies for them. But they had shows from the States, they had shows from all corners of the world. Sky put on a lot of international fight nights as well, but not as many. They tended, to be fair, to get the bigger ones, although saying that, Box Nation got a lot of big Canelo shows as well. So it was, at that time, although you didn't have people like DAZN around and stuff like that, you still were able to see a lot of the fights on this side of the pond over there. And Box Nation back in the day, I mean, there wasn't a week where you couldn't get a card on. And I remember this card very well because this card was absolutely tremendous. It really was. I mean, if you've never seen this card, it was tremendous. This was a bit of a golden age of boxing in that country. And obviously, we won't use the country's name for obvious reasons, and apologies. They're building outside the house across the road, and there's like lorries of cement going in every time. And I've got all the doors and windows closed to try and keep the noise out, but I can still hear it. I hope it's not picking up on that. Anyway, they were putting on great shows. It was World of Boxing who were putting these shows on. Now, Dmitry Bivol actually fought on this card. We went 5-0. I think Dmitry Bivol is still co-promoted by them to this day. But at this time, in that country, Povetkin and Denis Lebedev, they were two of the bigger names. And the two of them are obviously very good friends. And they normally headlined cards together. So sometimes you'd have Lebedev as the main event, and Povetkin as the co-main, and vice versa. I think Povetkin main evented this one, and Lebedev co-mained against Latif Coyote. I think he stopped in 7 or 8 rounds. But he fought Mariusz Wach. Now, Mariusz Wach, in the build-up to this fight, was saying that, well, basically he had a spat. He had a row with the promoter of the event, and was saying that he worried about getting paid. And in some interviews, he even claimed that he was actually fighting Povetkin for free. Now, Mariusz Wach, going into this fight, only had one loss. That was to Klitschko. And he had failed the drugs test before. He'd failed for steroids. Now, this wasn't an issue of contamination or anything like that. Mariusz Wach admitted, yep, his bad, and he served a ban. I think it was about a year. So, eyes were on Mariusz Wach. Eyes were on him. Povetkin was mandatory for Deontay Wilder at this stage, and the WBC silver title was on the line. Now, Povetkin won that fight. He won it in the 12th round. He stopped Mariusz Wach on an eye injury. And no sooner did the fight end, I think it was only a week or so after, it was announced that Mariusz Wach had failed the drug test by that country's anti-doping body. Right? Essentially, it'd be like the UCAD of that country, essentially. They said that Mariusz Wach had failed a drugs test. Now, it coincided with Mariusz Wach saying that he had rows with the promoter and he was afraid of not getting paid. So, eyebrows started raising. But also on the undercard, you had Dmitry Kudryashov. Now, if you don't know who Dmitry Kudryashov is, he is a Russian fighter. I think he's still active. He's 26-6 now. I think he fights a heavyweight. Now, he's a fringe contender, is fair to say. But at the time, I think he was about 15-16-0, 100% knockout ratio. He was going through everybody. Absolutely everybody. And he wasn't just going through them. He was going through them and laying them out. Like Wilder-esque. Just laying people out. Massive puncher. And he was touted as the cruiserweight Sergei Kovalev. Right? The cruiserweight version of Sergei Kovalev. Not as good, evidently. But he was a big name, and people were tuning in to see him in that country. He was essentially going to be the next golden boy of boxing in that country, And he fought Ola Duradola. If you want to use the full abbreviation of his name, it's Olrawanja Duradola. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, Duradola at the time, and many people would know Duradola now, was a bit of a journeyman. He obviously fought Richard Riakporhe last year, I think it was, and lost very badly. But at the time, Duradola was still a contender, and this had the WBC silver title on the line. And Duradola stopped Kudryashov in the 2nd round. And guess what? Duradola failed as well immediately after. Now, a lot of people were speculating that that was incorrect, that those positive tests were actually false positives. And the WBC, who sanctioned both those titles, launched an investigation with WADA. And I will leave a link to the Boxing Scene article. It is dated Thursday, the 24th of December 2015. I'll read it verbatim. Following an administrative investigation from the WBC has ruled on the petition from Olrawanja Duradola and Mariusz Wach regarding the WBC Silver Championship contest in Kazan, that country, on the 4th of November 2015. After the bouts, allegations were made that the testing agency in that country, testing of the A samples of both boxers taken after the fight showed positive tests occurring on November the 5th. However, on November the 9th, an independent commission reported to the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and as a result, on November the 18th, WADA declared that that testing agency had been non-compliant following the petition and request for expedited relief. And based upon the unique set of facts, the WBC has determined that it is unable to defend the reliability of that testing agency's testing of the A sample or the integrity of the B sample due to the chain of custody being solely at the non-compliant testing agency in that country. Therefore, the WBC has cleared Mr. Duradola and Mr. Wach for competition in the WBC, As they relate to the WBC, the results of both bouts remain as original. Povetkin remains WBC mandatory challenger and Ola Duradola remains WBC silver champion. Additionally, in order to confirm his status as silver champion, Mr. Duradola has executed the WBC's agreement to partake as required in the new WBC clean boxing program, which is being administered by the WBC in conjunction with the Independent Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency. The WBC clean boxing program being instituted provides for random and mandatory anti-doping testing for boxers in and out of competition. Mr. Duradola has indicated that he welcomes the opportunity to be part of this program, and the WBC is certain that Mr. Whyte also wishes to participate, each to confirm that after he fights as clean boxers and will comply with the rules and regulations of the WBC. That was Christmas Eve 2015. That right there is a situation where two boxers who were on the same show were both exonerated almost immediately. And this isn't like a Canelo or a Conor Benn situation where it was, you had your kind of head scratched and you were like, what's going on? The WBC exonerated Canelo almost instantly over the clenbuterol and Conor Benn. Those are two A-side fighters. Ola Duradola and Mariusz Wach, even hardcore fans at that time, wouldn't have really been that familiar. The WBC were making nothing off those guys. So they had no incentive from a financial point of view, even if they were guilty, to exonerate them. But they did. That was a situation, I believe, where they were basically looking for a reason, for one, not to pay Mariusz Wach, and for the second reason, they were trying to make Duradola versus Kudryashov a no contest. So Kudryashov could remain the undefeated golden boy. And they could say, oh, well, you see, he failed the drugs test. But we know that was, well, look, as I said, I just read it there. I want to be careful with the wording. So when people say that, it's a bit far-fetched to think that there can be setups. In Dillian Whyte's situation, do I think he was set up? Absolutely not. But does it happen? It certainly does. I mean, boxing. You go back to the early days, July 4th, 1910, Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries. There was talk that fight was going to be fixed, that Johnson was going to take a dive. When Johnson lost to Jess Willard, April 1915, he said that he took a dive because he wanted to get back in the States. He was winning that fight comfortably. I think it was the 26th round. When he went down, he was doing that to cover his eyes. A lot of people say he took a dive in that fight. Al Capone was ringside at Jack Dempsey Gene Tunney 2, the long count. And we saw the count that Jack Dempsey got, Gene Tunney got when Jack Dempsey dropped him. And we see the difference in the count when Gene Tunney dropped Jack Dempsey. It was instant when the referee picked up the count. Primo Carnera, owned and controlled by the mob. What was the guy's name? Frankie something in the 1950s or 60s? Sonny Liston, bought and sold by the mob. Many people feel as though the mob who did him in. So when people come and say, this MTK thing, that's not an isolated incident. It's been happening throughout the history of boxing. And when people say, it's a bit far-fetched that, promoters or something like that could, say this guy failed or this. Well, it's not. As you saw by that I just read there, that was recent. 2015 is not a million years ago. It's not that long ago. So that is a story that I don't think enough people know about. Because, again, Ola Duradola and Mariusz Wach, most people are not going to be looking them up and seeing and reading about their history like that. But I remember that very clearly at the time, because I watched that card and I enjoyed it. It was a tremendous card. I remember that very well, and I remember the story of this break-in and just almost being in disbelief that this actually happened and thinking it's too fantastic that Mariusz Wach is worried about not getting paid, and then this happens, and then Kudryashov loses the golden boy, and then this happens, and the WBC exonerated them. And the WBC, when they want to be, they can do their job. And in this situation, as I said, you're talking about B-side fighters. What reason did the WBC have to exonerate them? They didn't have any, but they did it anyway because they knew this is wrong. They didn't do anything. These are false positives, definitely. And that's what they did, non-compliant. So I want to share that story, and I hope you enjoyed it because I'll leave the link if you want to read the article verbatim. It's still on Boxing Scene. It's Christmas Eve 2015. So that's the story with that. In terms of Dillian Whyte, do I think it's similar with this? Hell no. But I want to just show that yes, this does happen in boxing. It has happened in the recent history. Dillian Whyte, I suspect he's guilty. If this was a first time offence, I don't know. But it's not. Dillian Whyte has done this before. And, Hatman quite rightly said Dillian Whyte is someone who doesn't want to take responsibility. He never seems to want to take it. When you have that, you'd look for any excuse. I mean, Tyson Fury, when he knocked out Dillian Whyte was saying, Fury's ducking the rematch. I'm like, what? No, he's not. What reason does Fury have to fight? He doesn't need to fight you again. He's already beat you handily. And just on Tyson Fury said when he fought Klitschko that he refused to drink or eat anything that wasn't provided by his own team. Many people said they felt he was being paranoid. And let it be said, Fury was clean for that fight against Vladimir Klitschko. But he refused to drink anything or eat anything over in Dusseldorf that wasn't okayed or coming from his team. Eddie Hearn, I remember he once said, I think it was 2015 or 2016, that if one of his fighters fights abroad, unless it's Matchroom approved, as in Matchroom have been the ones who've gotten the food or drinks, they are not allowed to touch anything else. Because why? They know this kind of stuff happens. That all of a sudden you could be clean, there you go, hotel gives you some water, you take a drink, boom, you've popped. What? It does happen. I hope you enjoyed this video. With regards, have a read of the article. Again, it's an old article, but still, have a read of it. And let me know your thoughts. Have you ever heard the story of Mariusz Vak and Ola Duradola? If you haven't, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.